Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Pinnacle of Glory, and I'm here with a controversial statement. I believe the book, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is actually better at investigating the effects of sin on the human soul than the book Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And I'm here to prepare to defend that statement. So, I never would have thought, well, let me be clear. I took down the review some time ago. I did not like Crime and Punishment. I could barely tolerate it. By the time it was done, I set it down and thought to myself, good riddance. And by the way, I speak as a fan of Dostoevsky's work. But this is not about him. This is about Robert Louis Stevenson. And I really found this fascinating because you kind of read this book in school, middle school, whatever. And then you kind of file it away. You never think about it again. You just think Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is just a kind of metaphor for someone who's got multiple personalities or something. And I mean, yeah, sure. It's far more complicated than that. And it's far more incisive than that. I think people underestimate just how profound a writer Robert Louis Stevenson was. Now, I don't have anything in front of me. I'm just riffing here. This is about 117 pages, and you can read it in an afternoon. I would have, except for the final 15 pages. It takes you all the way through the story of Dr. Jekyll. Now, you know that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are the same person, but when you read this story, it's fascinating because you actually aren't aware of that. Or it's so culturally baked in at this point, we all know it. But if you had never heard of this and just read it, you would not be aware of that fact until the great reveal at the end. And I think there's some things worth discussing here. I mean, this is really a story about sin. And Robert Louis Stevenson was an atheist, I think, when he wrote this. And it goes to show you just how much the discourse in the world has changed, just how much people have withered. Hesiod talks about the golden man, and now I believe we're the men of tin or something like that. And you kind of get a sense of that. And then there's Homer's words in the Iliad where he says this like 4 times. Someone will pick up a stone with 2 hands and throw it as a projectile against another officer. And he'll make a point of 2 men couldn't lift that in our age, weak as men are now. But there's that always makes me laugh when I read it. But there's some truth to this. There's not just some. It's true. It's true. We've degraded. And this book stands as a testament of that fact. The last 15 pages are some of the greatest writing I've ever seen. I'm telling you, the last 15 pages are better than Dostoevsky's attempt to show what happens to Raskolnikov because of his murder, because of the murder of the old lady. It's like he condenses it, but he also makes it better. He does it better, and I'll stand by that. So anyway, what happens, I'll give you very quick. This is usually where I flounder in my reviews and trail on too long. In case you don't know the story, there's a lawyer named Mr. Utterson who gets a strange will from his friend Dr. Jekyll, still alive. And the will says if Jekyll disappears for 3 months, everything goes to Mr. Hyde. Okay, that's basically what's up. Then Mr. Hyde is seen killing a member of parliament in the streets of London. And sorry for that. And what happens is he's wanted for murder. Eventually, he commits suicide. Okay, that's the very condensed story. But there's some themes here that are worth checking out. Now, obviously, the theme of duality, you can already hear the lit people being like, oh, the Jungian union of opposites, this sort of stuff. the shadow work and all that kind of interpretation. And by the way, all of that it would be legit. It's clearly evident in this text. Um, Integrating the shadow and all that. It's not hard to take that interpretation to this, and you would not be a fool for doing so. What I like about the last 15 pages in particular, it's Dr. Jekyll's confession, where it all comes together. He gives his full statement, and it's some of the most powerful writing, like I said, that I've ever seen. It's why I had to read this over a day and a half, and I didn't just grind through it. It wouldn't have been a grind, by the way. It was pleasant reading. The first 90 pages show Stevenson as a good writer. The last section of the book shows him as an excellent writer. And I don't think we've been fair to this author. I think he gets treated like Ray Bradbury, who wrote Fahrenheit 9/11, 91 or 451 rather, I think. And he gets treated like the lesser of the brothers of dystopian novels, where he deserves to be right up there with them. And in the same fashion, Robert Louis Stevenson deserves to be right up there with serious authors like Dostoevsky. He does. And even my man Melville. This guy is. I'm going to be reading Treasure Island after this. You know, the big thing on my channel that I'm trying to do is I'm looking for the stories that act as kind of the templates, the schema of other stories. Okay, the fountainheads, the archetypes. This is one of them. It absolutely is. And what happens is Mr. Hyde, you know, in movies when you see him depicted, he's huge, right? He's actually a really small guy. And the reason is Dr. Jekyll was a fairly noble character, but he was a mixed character. When he transforms to Jekyll, to Mr. Hyde, he takes his concoction. It's called transcendental medicine. What he ends up doing is he separates himself, but he does not separate himself into a being of good and a being of evil. He just separates himself as a mixed being, because all humans, right? You're not going to find someone who's just all bad. That's Mr. Hyde, by the way. But even the people you hate the most, you'll notice they have something good about them, right? For most people. And the point is, Jekyll doesn't split into angelic and demonic. He splits into pure evil and the mixed man that he normally is. So Mr. Hyde's small because Dr. Jekyll is not very advanced in evil. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's not a very... If he was a more evil man, Mr. Hyde would have been bigger. And in fact, as the story goes on and he starts to feed Mr. Hyde does grow bigger and he does change. His appearance changes. There's something funny about Mr. Hyde in the story. There are people that are described as being awful. There's a mention where Mr. Utterson goes to this great door and he sees some woman answer it. And he points out how she's a detestable hypocrite, but she's well-spoken and mannerly. So he's able to identify what it is that he doesn't like about her. With Mr. Hyde, multiple people in this story witness to it as Mr. Utterson's going around talking about this stuff with other doctors and friends of his, acquaintances of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. What happens is they all see Hyde and they say they just hate him. There's something contemptible about him. They don't know what it is, but there's something just fell. You know, there's something just truly dark around him, and they can't put their finger on it, but they all feel it very strongly. It's sort of intuited about him. And that's because he is pure darkness. He eventually is able to take over the more he's fed without even needing the potion to mix. And then Dr. Jekyll is trying to suppress it feverishly. And then Mr. Hyde murders that member of parliament. And that's where it becomes essentially Dr. Jekyll swears off his use of Hyde, because initially he's happy to be Hyde. It's basically, look, it's an allegory of the flesh and the spirit. Okay, it's the flesh. Mr. Hyde is the flesh. Romans chapter 8, verse 8. So then those who are in the flesh cannot please God. That sort of thing. That's what's going on here. In fact, and by the way, I mean, this is so, he makes many allusions to the Bible, to sin. And that's one of the reasons I said that the discourse has fallen. Robert Louis Stevenson understood the value of something like the book of Romans. Even as a non-believer, he was able to understand that there's something truly glimmering. There's a glimmering stone in the scriptures that's worth looking at, reading, even if you don't agree with it or believe it. In the modern day, I mean, if you bring up the Bible, you're looked at like an effing idiot. And should that be the case? No, I don't believe it should be the case. I am a Christian. And what's interesting is just how I'm losing myself because I'm trying to find the page. So like Romans 1:28. Furthermore, since they do not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, he gave them over to a depraved mind, to do what ought not be done. And the more he feeds his flesh, it's like an addiction, right? The more he feeds Hyde, the stronger Hyde gets. And Hyde is able to take him at will. And this is where the central conflict comes into play, because Jekyll and Hyde come and go. Jekyll has ordered all the servants of his household to allow Hyde to come and go as he pleases. The last thing I'll say about this, because I'm going to keep this one short, I don't want to ramble too much, is Robert Louis Stevenson is almost giving you the key. It's almost like an occult blinder, an occult blind, where he's giving you the key of knowledge of how to interpret literature itself. In the final, because everything, and I mean everything, as I was reading this, that I thought to myself, why is, I was asking myself all these questions. He answers. People will say, oh, show, don't tell. No. Just because someone has decreed that to be the case doesn't make it so. This is an example of where in Dr. Jekyll's confession, telling is done right. Okay. So I reject that as some ironclad rule that I'm meant to follow. But he really gives you the explanation of the entire book. Like he exoterically reveals the esoteric to you in the final parts of this. And it's very fascinating. I'm sure someone's going to tell me that he was a member of the occult or something. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. But the point is, he's got a really fascinating way of interpreting things. And I like that he notices how, for all the vigilance of Dr. Jekyll, it only took him one unguarded, weak moment to bring all his good down. And that's what it took for Mr. Hyde to gain the advantage. And this is where there's a lot of value to reading this. I don't want to, insist any further than I have. I strongly believe that this book should be read by more people in the modern age. Even though you know the twist, like I said, it's written so that you're not supposed to know it. Every time you might suspect it, there is an answer for why it's not the same man. There's a reasonable answer. Until you finally find out, oh, it is in fact the same man, the same vessel. And so, I don't know what else to say. It's a warning. This book is a warning because all of us have this within us, right? The potential to be one or the other of these. And it's always easy to It's always easy to look at someone else and see their flaws, but with this kind of book is the one that makes you reflect on your own. And I think people need to be doing that more often than not. It's like, I've been hard on Dostoevsky, so I'll throw him a bone here because I do love the man. I will say that I think this is from the Brothers Karamazov, right? He says that the battleground of God and Satan is upon the human heart, or something of that effect. So I absolutely agree with that. And this book does a great job of discussing it. There's more to it, more that could be said, but I believe I've said what should be said. So I'll leave it there. Check this book out. It's worth your time.